Hello and welcome to Fork in the Road. My name is Rusty Gaylord and I'm the host and happy to welcome you here to our live edition. Fork in the Road is a conversation with smart, successful people who have had interesting career journeys. We get to talk about the forks in their road and some of the lessons they've taken from that. If you're watching us live, you're welcome to put comments and chats in the chat here on LinkedIn, and we'd love to hear your questions and interact with them. I am happy to introduce David Siegel today. David is the CEO of Meetup, which is the largest platform for finding and building local community. He has 25 years of experience as a technology and digital media executive, including as CEO of Investopedia and as president of Seeking Alpha before that. He is the author of a wonderful book, Decide and Conquer, 44 Decisions That Make or Break All Leaders, which was published earlier this year. He's also a host of the podcast, Keep Connected. So David, welcome to Fork in the Road.
It's so great to be here. I'll bring my fork, my spoon, my knife, you name it, even a spork. We'll get it going.
Spork, I like that. That's a fun one. Well, hey, I'd like to jump into kind of an interesting part of your story, or a fork in the road for you, which was when you were interviewing for the role as CEO as Meetup, and you'd been through a number of interviews, and you finally went to them and said, look, I'm not talking to any more people. Either you make me the offer or let's part ways. How did you come to that decision? That seems like a very bold move.
It definitely was a bold move, but oh my God, I had 27 interviews for the job by that time, 27 interviews. So I had interviewed first with WeWork and with Adam Neumann, who is the founder of WeWork, and a lot of crazy experiences as part of that interview process. And WeWork was basically like, okay, we want to hire you. But after all those interviews, they said, we need to get buy-in from the Meetup team and from the Meetup founder. So I met with the Meetup founder, Scott Heifern, once. Okay. Met with him a second time. Okay. Met with him a third time. Spent a whole day with him that third time. Okay. Met with all the leadership team. Great. And then they called me up after a 4-month process, probably 500 hours have been put into preparing for interviews, going to interviews, going in for like one day and it taking 4 hours in and out, etc. And they said, we want to do a dinner with the entire Meetup leadership team of 15 people for a few hours for us all just to really bond and get to know each other before we, give the final okay. I was like, I already have this. I didn't say this, but I'm like, I already have this job. WeWork's already told me this. So I'm not going to keep playing this game. The answer is I'm not comfortable doing it. And we need to either make the decision that we're going to move forward or we're not going to make the decision. I think for a lot of people, the two letters in the word that people are most uncomfortable saying is no, because you sound like a not nice person, an ass blank if you say no too often. And everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be liked. And the reality is that, a lot of times people are taken advantage of. Sometimes people are interviewed for just like free consulting continuously and don't put an end to it. And it's very important to value yourself and to value your time and to understand that people respect people who value themselves and their time more. And you'll actually come off better because you actually are able to stand up for yourself effectively. And then they give you an offer.
Well, so one of the things that you talk about in your book, and it comes through in this story and what you just said, is that it's not just are you qualified for this, but it's how you handle yourself in the interview process and in the negotiation process. Once you're in the offer stage, those are all indicators of how you're going to perform as a leader. So go ahead.
The example that I gave for that in the book, as I'm sure you remember, because somehow you remember like more about the book than I do, which is awesome. Is I was interviewing for a job maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the CEO was the person who wanted to negotiate with me. And it's not typical that a CEO does that negotiation. His name is Ben Wolin. It was to become a senior vice president at a company called Everyday Health, which is a big health publisher. And we went back and forth and this and that, and I pushed him and prodded him, And I said to him afterwards, Ben, why are you going back and forth and spending your time as the CEO of the company on all these negotiations? Usually the head of HR does this. Like, why are you involved in this? And he said exactly what you said, Rusty. He said, you are going to have to negotiate a lot. You're going to have to influence a lot. You're going to have to be aggressive at times, and you have to be thoughtful at times. And I want to see how you're interacting during those times, during this process, because if you can't represent yourself, how can you represent the needs of the company? And again, it's a perfect example of like when I thought I might have been going too far, when I thought I might have been asking too much, he actually saw that as a huge positive and a reason to want to hire me, as opposed to just being like, a lot of people, I don't want to upset this person by asking for $5,000 more. When people do that, they're less impressive than asking in the right way, always in the right way.
Yeah. So that makes, okay. It's easier to wrap your head around that when you're thinking about interviewing for a new job. But let's say you're inside of a company and you're having these conversations with your boss or, with somebody in the organization about whether it's your compensation or the next role that you want to take. Does any of that change if you're inside the company wanting to move up?
It doesn't. But the problem is most people think that the only time to really negotiate is when you're applying for a new job. Or what people do is they're unhappy in their comp, they're unhappy with their promotion, whatever it is. They just start looking for another job. And then they announce to their manager, I'm sorry, I just giving notice, I'm leaving. The greatest thing, the thing that actually paradoxically makes me incredibly happy is when someone goes to a manager in their organization and says, Eileen, I like my job a lot, but I don't feel like I'm paid appropriately, or I don't feel like I'm leveled appropriately. And I haven't started looking, or I have started looking. I think I could end up leaving because of this. And then it gives you an opportunity. And then sometimes we're like, leave. That's okay. Keep looking if it's not the right person. But we want you to stay. It's not like we will ever ask someone to leave because of that. In fact, we'll have more respect for them. But many, many, many times we're like, wow, we need to keep you here. This is really important. Thank you so much for coming to us before it's too late. Because when you're able to make decisions and when you're able to not surprise people, and I've done that. I've gone to my managers before and I said, I'm not happy. I'm going to start looking for another job. And I wanted you to know about it. And they said, thank you for telling us. We'll see if we could do something. And if not, I know you're going to work at 100%. And I said, absolutely. So it's a great way to open up communications and have an uncomfortable conversation. But you know what? Uncomfortable conversations are a great part of life. If you and your spouse never have an uncomfortable conversation, that's not a good thing. If your kids never have an uncomfortable conversation, that's never a good thing. You and your close friends, like it's part of growing as a person.
Well, I 100% agree with you. Having the uncomfortable conversation and being willing to do it. And I'm of the belief that that's one of the things that differentiates people who are successful as leaders from those who aren't. I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, healthy tension is what I like to try to call it, which is, a lot of times leaders can try to pacify or appease all the people on their team. And by doing that, they're not strong leaders. They're just trying to, quote unquote, make people, happy or whatever it is. A lot of times managers, not just leaders, but managers will look at their entire job as how can I support and do whatever it is that the person who works for me wants. But no, sometimes a part of being a manager is that, but it's also, I could support you best by giving you better direction. I could support you best by telling you at times that it's best to do X, Y, and Z. So that creates a tension, but it's a healthy tension. If there's no tension between, let's say, a product team and a sales team, and then it means either sales is getting whatever it wants or product is getting whatever it wants. And that's not healthy. You need to have a balance between that. So within leadership, you want that tension. It all comes to trust. Because here's the thing. If you have trust in a company, then that tension is no longer antagonistic. It's understood from the perspective of you're just trying to help the company. You're just trying to do things better. If there's a lack of trust and people think that everyone's just out to do things for themselves and to make themselves look better or to improve their own function or position or career, that's where things really break down. So trust is the foundation for being able to have healthy tension, which is critical in all relationships.
So one of the things so trust clearly is important, but one of the things in order to have that healthy tension and to be comfortable walking into it, and you talk about this in your book, where you had faced times where you were changing the direction and the strategy of Meetup, and you had mass exodus, you had a bunch of employees leaving. And one of the things you said is you have to have a thick skin. You've got to be willing to walk in to have those uncomfortable conversations, to make a change in direction, to give someone direction that they may disagree with, they may not like. They may come to you and say, "Hey, David, I'm looking for another job now." Just to piggyback on what we were just saying. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the thick skin? Certainly some people are just born with a thicker skin than others. They're more willing to go out in the world and follow their own path. But how do you cultivate that strength? How do you build the confidence that your decision is moving in the right direction so that you're going to go in that direction, even when there's some pushback?
Well, you've been mentioning my book before, Decide and Conquer, but I'm going to mention a different book right now, believe it or not. It's related. It's called this book here. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No,
I've never read it before, but I heard of it. And I actually haven't even like started reading it yet. But it's exactly what you're saying. The courage to be disliked. No one wants to be disliked. And I'll tell you, you asked me if I was born with thick skin or not. I was born with very thin skin, meaning I was shyer. I was shy when I was younger. I was bullied when I was younger, a bit, not a lot, thank God, but a bit, certainly. I felt lack of confidence when I was younger. And all I wanted to do was have lots of friends. And all I wanted to do was be liked by lots of people because I felt like other people had more friends. They were more liked than me. Mm-hmm. So as I started my career, I really prioritized being liked. And therefore I had thin skin. And I was a worse manager and leader and decision maker, definitely because of it. So then I've definitely evolved. And it's not like I don't care. But and when I do get this Glassdoor, rating or something like that, and it rates the CEO, when you see and you look at it, you're like, oh, that hurts. They don't know the full picture. And you see that and it's like public or other types of websites and apps that are out there that just kind of analyze the CEO to death and make you feel like you're a failure half the time, like Blind and others. So I think only in the last few years have I really built a thicker skin. And part of it, there are a couple of reasons for it. So number one is, I think when you have some demonstrated success that you perceive to have been a success, a lot of times people have lots of successes, but they still see themselves as failures, which is very sad. But when I was a CEO of Investopedia prior to Meetup, it was the first CEO job, and it was an enormous success. We were ranked as like top company to work for in New York, best company to work by Fortune, all these other amazing awards and things like that. And I was like, wow, like I felt like good about, from a business perspective, every other perspective. When I came to Meetup, and so many people just ended up wanting a different type of leadership, which was very much more hands-off leadership, a leadership where I don't know, like WeWork, you spent lots of money and had lots of fun, but didn't really have, appropriate discipline in running a company. And a lot of people decided that they didn't want to stay here anymore. I had that kind of success to fall back on. And I was like, wait, I know that I'm not like a terrible leader because I've had successes in the past, and I believe that I had that success in the past, and that helped me. So that's number one. Had I not had that in the past, and I kind of jumped into this situation, it would have been a lot harder to have thicker skin around it. That's number one. Number two is, I've made the mistake so often of not truly doing what was in the best interest of the company, but making people happy kind of around me as like a philosophy, because I've read everything about like, do everything to support your employees, and your employees therefore support your customers, and customers, and everything's about supporting and doing everything you can for employees. I just so deeply always believed in that when at Meetup, when I started being much more of a didactic leader versus an empowering leader, I knew that what I was doing wasn't working, and I knew I needed to change. So once you start saying, okay, I am not going to care about my perception anymore, come heck or high water, I am going to figure out how Meetup can ultimately be a successful company. We were losing close to $20 million. Pandemic happened. We then became $3 million in profit. We had a $23 million kind of profit swing from an unsustainable model into actually being a successful business. And, a lot of employees left, and then new people came in, and now our employee engagement scores and our all the scores that we track for employees are continuously improving. It just takes a long time to get there. So it is hard to have so many people misunderstand why one's doing something. And in reality, you try to be transparent, but you also can't explain fully why sometimes some people have to leave, because it's not appropriate to do so.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I hear you talking about, which makes a ton of sense, right, is this transition from trying to please other people or, satisfy the employees, the people around you, to doing what's right for the company. I talk about this thing as the A trap, because if you think about people who are in school, they're going for A's, which is pleasing the teacher. And then you get your first job and you want to please your boss, right? You want to please the people around you. So you almost get trained, especially the smart, successful people, to get an A, right? And it becomes this A trap because it's all about pleasing other people, where you really want to get out of that and start charting a new direction. I'm curious, as you think about the organizations that you've worked in, is there a particular level in the organization or a particular position or maturity at which it makes that, like, you have to start making that transition? Because in your first job, clearly you're going to be doing the work given to you, right?
Correct.
You're not starting the path. So when does that change happen?
I mean, it should never be like most change. It should never be like an extreme change. Every time should be, let's say your first job is like 100%, not 100%, that's too much. Let's say your first job is 80% trying to please the other person, look good, get promoted, et cetera. And 20%, I'm making this up, is like actually do an amazing job, right? Yeah. And every job, as you get more senior, should be a higher percentage. But even as a CEO, it's not just about doing a good job. It's about having your board perceive that you're doing a good job. And if you're a publicly traded CEO, then it's about all of your shareholders and, perceiving that you're doing a great job. So the perception of how you're doing is there regardless of the level that you actually happen to be in. So much comes down to, though, not judging yourself and evaluating your worth by how you're by the box score and how you're ultimately being perceived. So, for example, I talked to a public company CEO a couple of months ago, and I said to her, "Oh my God, it must be so stressful to see your stock down like 70%, 80%. I mean, it must be so hard." And she said, "I never look. I never look. And I tell my team not to look, because the problem is that we're being judged by people who don't necessarily understand the full picture. We're being judged by metrics that can ebb and flow based on things completely out of our control." And I think to me, the way to self-confidence and self-esteem is so important. If an action fails, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. If a mistake was made, it doesn't mean that you're a mistake. It's just you try not to personalize these negative experiences that you have and say, those are great learning experiences. To me, that's what's really important. So as you grow in your career and you have hopefully different successes that happen, you could fall back and say, "Oh, I made a mistake. I'm going to fess up to that mistake. I'm not going to say that it's because I'm a failure. It's just that experience happened to have not been what we expected." And focus on the process, I would say, as opposed to just the outcome. And good leaders understand that you focus on processes. Sometimes the outcomes don't work out. Sometimes you end up with a great outcome, even if the process wasn't the right one. And that's where you can control the process.
I love that, focus on the process more than the outcome. As someone who, I spent 14 years working at Apple.
Wow.
And Apple is an intense place. So lots of time, lots of energy devoted to my job. And even if I'm focused on the process, clearly with an eye on the outcome as well. It's just, I've always had that in me. But one of the things that I know that you talk a little bit about in your book, but I'm curious to hear you expound on this a little bit, is the importance of downtime or family time or distance from your work. Because so many of us, and especially when you're working at a high, fast-paced, intense kind of place, high demands, it's easy to just let everything get poured into that. And, I'm on all the time. I'm checking email on the weekends. I know people who brought their computer with them on vacation. And so I'm curious on your perspective on getting that distance from work and how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was fortunate to have grown up with a dad who I loved beyond deeply, deeply, but he was a neurologist and really focused on being an amazing neurologist, building a neurological practice, saving lives, helping people with Alzheimer's, et cetera. But he worked 80 hours a week, like almost my entire life. And he worked half of weekends that I didn't even see him. And I remember crying as like a little kid being like, Dad, I don't see you anymore. It was really, and I just swore to myself at a sometimes people repeat how their parents are, but I said, like, I'm not going to be like that. I am going to really prioritize, and I'm not, working to, like, I'm not saving lives like my dad was. I'm like working to live, not living to work. And like, that was just my philosophy from like a super early age. And I think it's when you appreciate the fact that, life goes by fast and no one lies in their deathbed thinking, gosh, I wish I took my laptop on more vacations. It's really important to prioritize kind of your time. And oh, by the way, you will be a happier person. And oh, by the way, as a happier person, you will attract people around you who want to be around you. You will do a better job because you are a happier person. You will be a more interesting person. You'll be a more curious person. You are going to be better at your job by taking that time away. And I just, it's not just thing I say, like, I really believe that I will be a better leader by taking that. I'll be more empathetic to other people's needs by doing that. So, yeah. So it's not that I do it because it's a nice thing to do. I do it because it actually I truly believe it makes me a better manager and leader. So it's a lot easier to do it when it's fully rational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that second part is so important, right? And not only does it make you a better person and be happier and have a better life, but those things make you a better leader.
Exactly. It's like, sometimes people struggle. Should I go to business school for undergraduate, or should I get a broad education? I studied philosophy, political science, and economics. I took maybe 1 or 2 business classes, but I was more of a broad liberal arts person. I have interests, a lot of different interests, that when I have business meetings and we're not talking about business, I can be talking about politics, talking about philosophy. You're a more curious person, and that helps you in sales. It helps you in marketing, it helps you in relationship building, helps you in networking, helps you in partnerships. All those things are very helpful. And being successful in kind of, what you do in any aspect.
Yeah. Well, so as we're wrapping up, just one final question for you, which is, something we were chatting a little bit about before, but, what differentiates those people who make it into the leadership ranks from those who don't?
You have to truly understand the many negative impacts of being a leader. And there are so many. People look at these, CEOs and like, oh my God, the average CEO pay is X times the average regular pay. And it is too high a ratio. I want to be that. They get to fly business class if they do in certain, like, oh, look at all these, go to Davos. I've never been to Davos, but like, they get to go all these like great, experiences. But what they don't understand is that you are under a fishbowl every single minute that you're in the office, every action you're taking, every hesitation that you make, people read into everything. Everything that you write, people read into. You're constantly being looked at. So a lot of people don't want that. You also have to be an exceptionally patient communicator and comfortable communicating the same things over and over and over and over again. I would say when people want to become a leader and they just see all the positive external things that come with leadership, and they don't understand the many challenges of being a leader and having tons of stress on your shoulders kind of all the time, those are the people that realize, oh my God, what am I thinking? This is not for me. Go into it with the eyes wide open. Read my book, read other people's leadership books about like the hellish experiences oftentimes of being a leader. And there's great things too. But if you see leadership, and I'll end with this, as a service, if you see it as like something that is helping other people to become the people that they want to be, to succeed in business, succeed in their careers, to me, that's the best reason to become a leader, because leadership can change lives. And that's why we're here on earth. And if it's for other reasons, more ego-driven reasons, chances are it's probably not going to work out.
Yeah. Oh, what a wonderful place to end. For anyone who has not read David's book, I highly recommend it. Decide and Conquer. You can find it on anywhere you find your favorite books. Is there anything else that you'd like to point people to, a way to stay connected with you or kind of follow up on any of the things we've been talking about?
Sure. I mean, I would say the Audible version of the book is great if you're interested in listening to books. So I recommend that. And feel free to send me a LinkedIn invite. I love LinkedIn invites. Send me an invite. If you want to follow me on Twitter, at David Mary Siegel, or on Instagram. And hopefully this was helpful for you.
Oh, this was wonderful. So thank you so much, David.
Thank you.